Parliament's failure to prevent corruption within government is exposed daily at the state capture inquiry. If Parliament had acted when claims of state capture first arose in 2011, well, billions of looted money could well have been saved. The question remains about government's efficiency in terms of its oversight role when dealing with some of these matters. We're joined by governance specialist Judith February. Judith, good evening. A pleasure speaking to you. You know, I suppose in order to understand where we are as a country today, it's unavoidable for us to look back, because that really helps us understand where some of the fractures in our system began and what has allowed them to persist for as long as they have.
Good evening, Cathy. Absolutely, and particularly on a day like today, where we see former President Jacob Zuma in court for arms deal-related corruption and fraud, and he has pleaded not guilty to those charges. No surprises there. And this matter has dragged on. And it is always good for us to look back so that we're able to not to repeat the mistakes of the past. And certainly also we had the Speaker, Baleka Mbete, speaking before the Zondo Commission, talking about the role of Parliament latterly in the arms deal investigation. And so it's worth always reminding ourselves of that history. And isn't it interesting, Cathy, that the first witness was going to be Patricia de Lille, now the leader of the Good Party, but then she was with the PAC. And it was de Lille who first came to Parliament in '99, I think it was, and with the sweater saying, "The arms deal is out of my hands." And that was the first alarm bell that was raised about this deal. And Parliament's failure to deal with it in 2001 has left us now reaping the sour, bitter fruit of that indecision and inability to hold the executive to account.
Of course, if one is to have confidence in the fact that Parliament will do things differently in future, acknowledging where things have gone wrong and where bad decisions have been made is perhaps a good place to start. You referenced the former Speaker, Baleka Mbete's appearance before the Zondo Commission of Inquiry. Asked if she would change anything, she said she would do that again. And I juxtapose that, Judith, against the evidence given by President Cyril Ramaphosa on behalf of the ANC, also before the same commission, saying when they were approached with reports of looting that was taking place, they thought it was part of political conspiracies. At which point do we begin to have confidence in the fact that anything has changed for the better or even will change for the better?
Well, Cathy, that has also got to do with the internal politics of the ANC. And the ANC itself is largely unfit for purpose. Its Secretary General also faces charges of corruption. We've had a great deal of navel-gazing around whether people should step aside or whether they should resign and so on within the ANC. And that spills over into the state. Just today, we also were focusing on the corruption allegations in the Department of Health, and the Minister of Health is having to explain. And so these things are still happening. I think what we are seeing is a cleanup of sorts. And if you look at some good news coming out of Eskom yesterday and also SARS, but there's a lot of work to be done, because, Cathy, what happened with the arms deal as the sort of first, apart from Sarafina, the first multi-billion rand expenditure procurement in post-apartheid South Africa, is you saw that Parliament was weakened so that it couldn't hold the executive to account. The Public Accounts Committee was emasculated. And what we've seen since then, and obviously state capture was the high point of this, is institutions being hollowed out. And now these institutions need to repurpose themselves. But that is difficult. I find it very hard to believe that the ANC or President Ramaphosa, as he now is, would have thought that all the corruption was a conspiracy theory. I don't think anyone really fully believes that, and probably the president doesn't either, because it must have been a massive conspiracy to loot to the tune of billions. And we've had independent media in our country consistently uncovering this sort of corruption. So it was all in the public domain.
Judith, one of the things that you do, of course, is lay the critique of oversight and accountability, or the lack thereof, not just at the door of Parliament, but also of Chapter 9 institutions that are also critical in performing oversight over what's happening in government.
Absolutely, Cathy, and I wrote about this, but also if we look at the Public Protector's Office, for instance, which seems to me to be completely captured by an individual who is unfit for the role and whom has been found to also be wanting in terms of her legal skills by several courts. It seems as if that office spends more of its time in litigation protecting the advocate Mkhwebane than actually doing what it's meant to be doing. And we saw, of course, under previous public protector, Thuli Madonsela, how powerful that office really could be. And we've got the Nkandla report, Secure and Comfort, to go by there, and eventually a constitutional court case. And we saw, though, that so leadership does matter in these institutions. And we know that the Auditor General's Office has been strong, and it's got more powers now in terms of the Public Audit Act, which is good news. And so we need to keep scrutinizing the processes by which individuals are appointed to these Chapter 9 institutions. And Cathy, of course, the Public Protector is at the middle of a storm because there's a process in Parliament which is trying to deal with her removal. And that is also a political hot potato because you're fighting some of the internal politics of the ANC as well. And added to that, the strange politics of the EFF with regard to the Public Protector. And it is a bit of a toxic mix. And it's going to be a real test, I think, for Parliament and for the ANC in Parliament.
For our institutions, Judith, what do you think it'll really take in order to shake off even a perception of factionalism when different leaders come in?
Cathy, it's going to take a long time to repurpose these institutions, particularly in Parliament, because, of course, Parliament replicates the state of individual parties. And, you know, here one's not only talking about the ANC, but also about the Democratic Alliance, the EFF, and so on. I mean, I've been following Parliament for many years, and not since the first Parliament, but from about 2000. And, of course, the first Parliament, those were the halcyon days where you had senior members of the parties in Parliament, really adept legislators. I mean, the Justice Committee, one never appeared before Johnny de Lange, the Justice Committee, without being super prepared because such was the rigor. That rigor, sadly, has been lost. And the rigor came from both sides, from opposition MPs and also from the ANC benches. That rigor has been lost, and so it will take time for us to, as I said, to repurpose these institutions. But Cathy, leadership matters, and so who we put as head of institutions, the individuals appointed, that is extremely important. And so I think we should be grateful and pleased that the transition with regard to the Auditor General's Office, that has gone very smoothly, and a competent woman now heads it up. We can look at SARS and so on, and there is competent leadership. But still, even the competent leader is going to need people, in various areas of these institutions to actually do the work. So this is the hard yard. These are the hard yards of building a democratic society. And so much of what was built up has been broken down. And it's going to be very, very difficult to restore the credibility and legitimacy of democratic institutions. But Cathy, it's also about you and me. It's about all of us demanding greater accountability. The state is only as strong as those of us, our demand for accountability, our demand for proper leadership. So we need to keep having these conversations.
Governance specialist Judith February, thank you so much for your time tonight. All right.